How's everyone doing? Hopefully well. Hopefully well. We'll give everyone just a little bit of time to gather around the proverbial campfire. We got some fun stuff to review. Today's actually a little bit of news, a little bit of reviewing. We have Cloudflare released their API security and management report, so we're going to be going over that. We got a incident report from Resend. So those are our two security things. I'm kind of interested to go over them, review them, try to understand them better. We got a little bit as far as layoffs going that we're going to talk about. And then just a little bit of cloud news, but not a ton. So we don't have a ton to do today. That's a good thing. We're going to keep it short, sweet, and to the point. How's everybody's weekend going so far? Hopefully well. Hopefully well. I have a new cable for this, so hopefully the disconnecting issue is the cable and not the microphone. It's definitely the cheaper of the two things to have something go wrong with it, so hopefully that cable fixes this up. And we're good to go. All right. All right. Well, let's go ahead and get into it. Let's go ahead and get into it. So first off, let's jump into security. It's one of our favorites. So the first thing that we had this week in security was introducing Cloudflare's 2024 API Security and Management Report. So I thought it would be good to review this. They have a lot of information on security and how to secure your different things. So I thought we would review this really quickly. Now, I have read this before. I only briefly went over it, but yeah. As you may know, Cloudflare as a company powering nearly 20% of the web. That's amazing. I didn't actually think it was that large, but I do know that a lot of people use them as a WAF, even if they use a different cloud. But providing and protecting websites and static content is only a fraction of what we do, and that's what I think is a lot of that 20%. In fact, we have over half the dynamic traffic on our network consists not of web pages, but of application programming interfaces, APIs. The plumbing that makes technology work. The blog introduces This blog introduces and is a supplement to the API security report for 2024, where we detail exactly how we're protecting our customers and what it means for the future of API security. Unlike other industry API reports, our report isn't based on user survey, but instead on real traffic data. So I think that this is really cool and why I wanted to share it with you all and review it. If there's only one thing you take away from this report this year, it's this. Many organizations lack accurate API inventories. True. Very true. Even when they believe they can correctly identify API traffic, Cloudflare helps organizations discover all their public-facing APIs using two approaches. We'll open that link. First, customers configure our API discovery tool to monitor and identify tokens present in their known API traffic. We use a machine learning. Of course, everybody uses a machine learning nowadays. Absolutely everyone. That scans not just for these API token calls, but all HTTP requests, identifying API traffic that may be going unaccounted for. The difference between these approaches is striking. We found 37% more API endpoints through machine learning-based discovery than the self-reported approach. That doesn't surprise me. They're saying statistical analysis here, and this is always going to find more than self-reporting. Absolutely. Read on for extras and highlights from our inaugural API security report. In the full report, you'll find updated statistics about the threats we see and prevent. I decided not to go through the full report, keep it a little bit shorter, but you guys probably should read the full report. How are web pages and APIs different? APIs are a quick and easy way for applications to retrieve data in the background or ask what work or ask that work be done for other applications. For example, anyone can write a weather app without being a meteorologist. A developer can write the structure of the page or mobile application and ask weather APIs for the forecast using the user's location. Critically, most of the end users don't know the data was provided by the weather API and not the app's owner. This is true. Most people don't know where the APIs that you're hitting, and most people don't open up or inspect the page either. While APIs are the critical plumbing of the internet, they also ripe for abuse. For example, flaws in API authentication and authorization at Outpus led to threat actor offering 10 million users records for sale, and the government agencies have warned about these exact API attacks. All right, let's cut to the chase. We want to see more. To help customers solve this problem, we ship API discovery. When we introduced our latest release, we mentioned how few organizations have accurate API inventories. Security teams sometimes are forced to adopt an email and ask approach to build an inventory. That's terrifying. And in doing so, responses are immediately stale upon the next application release when APIs are changed. Again, that's why it's kind of difficult. I can tell you, if you guys are interested, Bankai, hello. I can tell you at the end of this, if you'd like, how for smaller teams, I've managed API inventories and keeping track of it. It's kind of hacky, but it also works for small teams if you're interested. Better is to track the API changes by code-based changes, keeping up with new releases. This is exactly what we do for small teams. However, this still has the drawback of only inventorying actively maintained code. Legacy applications may not see new releases despite receiving production traffic. Cloudflare's approach to API management involves creating a comprehensive, accurate API inventory using a blend of machine learning-based API discovery and network traffic inspection. This is inaugural to our API Gateway product, where customers can manage their internet-facing endpoints and monitor API health. So, yeah. As noted earlier, our analysis reveals even knowable customers often overlook significant portions of their API traffic. By comparison, session-based API discovery, using API sessions to pinpoint traffic with our machine learning-based API discovery, they found that the later uncovers an average of 30% more endpoints. Okay, so now we're getting into some of the good stuff here. You can still get started building an API inventory. APIs are typically cataloged standardized format called OpenAPI. Has everybody used OpenAPI here? Hopefully. And many development tools can build OpenAPI formatted schemes. This is actually why I like C#, to be honest, because it allows you to generate this, which is pretty cool. based off of your code. If you can generate your OpenAPI docs based off of your code, that is key. That way it's not what you think it is, it's what you know it is. Because the skew between OpenAPI and your actual code, if it can have skew and not generated, is a problem. If you have files with that format, you can start to build an API inventory yourself by collecting these schemas. Here's an example of how we can pull the endpoints of a schema file. JavaScript. Oh no, this is Python. Better. I'll take it. So what they're doing here is just taking their OpenAPI spec and building a list of APIs that are available. They're literally just looping over it and doing it. So this actually might not be that terrible. That way, if you have several different microservices that have their own OpenAPI spec, as long as you have a standard for dumping that OpenAPI spec, you could run this anytime there was a deployment and have a new list of endpoints. Now, I had a video. I have a video. I'm working on a video about HTMX, which actually talks about API endpoints. And I got to re-record it because the first time I recorded it, I talked about why I didn't like HTMX, and I realized people don't understand why HTMX exists. The second time I recorded it, they recorded with no audio. The third time I recorded it, it recorded with no lights on because I guess I forgot the lights on. So fourth time is the charm. We're going to record it and it's going to be wonderful. But it actually talks some about this because this is one of the issues. The API churn is really what HTMX is trying to solve. All right, so this is the one thing that I found as I started to go through this very interesting was precise rate limits minimize attack potential. It kind of makes sense, but I hadn't thought about this. A lot of times you use rate limiting to protect yourself from bad actors, but I have been in the wrong here and used it as a gross thing. So like this is a gross number. If you're hitting this API 100 times a second, obviously you're doing something bad. But what they're going to argue here, which I think was actually pretty cool, is that you should actually work to calculate that precisely. Like using this API, you can only ever hit it this many times if you're using it correctly. Implementing limits on your API is a valuable tool to keep abuse in check and prevent accidental overload of the origin. But how do you know if you've chosen the correct rate limit approach? Approaches can vary, but they generally come down to the error code chosen. The basics for the rate limit its value itself. For some APIs, practitioners configure rate limit errors to respond with HTTP 403, which is a forbidden, which kind of makes sense. While others will respond with 429, which is too many requests. Using HTTP 403 sounds incorrect enough until you realize that other security tools are also responding with 403 codes. When you're under attack, it can be hard to decipher which tools are responsible for which errors or blocking. Alternatively, if you use HTTP 429 for your rate limits, attackers will instantly know that they've been rate limited and can surf right under the limit. So what they're basically saying, this is also why you don't tell them that their password or username is wrong, is because that's actually giving up information. And so one of the things that they're saying here is if you do rate limit, you might not want to return 429 because this lets the hackers know exactly what's going on, why their request was bad. Whereas the more information you can keep from them, the better. There are pros and cons to both approaches, but we find that by far most APIs respond with 429 out of all the 4 and 500 error message, almost 52%. So this is really interesting. I get that this exists, but I guess it's actually kind of a trap. You really should be responding, with something else. The 403 I think makes sense. The forbidden, you know, it's forbidden to do that many. So you're not telling them exactly why it's forbidden. You're just telling them that their action, their request, something was forbidden. So that's something I'm gonna have to think about. I think maybe rate limiting might need to be limited to 403s from now on. But this is really cool. You actually get the data. Most people respond, almost 52%, with too many requests. Bad requests is an interesting one. Just a straight 400. I didn't actually expect that one. But that's interesting. If it was me, it would be 401, 403, or 429. Because unauthorized, like, you're not, also works in the same way 403 does. What about the logic for the rate limit rule itself, not just the response code? Implementing request limits on IP addresses can be tempting, but we recommend you base the limit on a session ID as a best practice and only fall back to IP address when session IDs aren't available. So this is basically limiting a session, not an IP address, which is really important. Setting rate limits on users' sessions instead of IPs will reliably identify your real users and minimize false positives due to shared IP space. So the reason that they're doing this, the reason that this is an important thing, is let's say that there's, it's shared IP, and you're going to think, well, okay, my brother is on the same Wi-Fi as me. But the fact of the matter is there's a couple things. One, a lot of people work off of a rotating IP address. They don't have a fixed IP address. And that means that they can accidentally inherit a IP address that was used by a bad actor. And now you're rate limiting them or blocking them based off of them just having gotten an IP address, and those IP addresses get burned. The other problem that comes down to is there's also like data centers where you might get bad traffic out of a data center, the egress of a data center, and it's shared by a lot of people. So it's important to try to do it based off of session if you can. Hello, Russell. How are you doing? To find values for your rate limits, Cloudflare Gateway computes session request statistics for you. So this is about how Cloudflare does it. This isn't super pertinent to it. But what I have found when you're trying to find rate limits is basically make a bell curve, and then basically you can find from that bell curve what the standard usage is and make it off of that. Most of the time, usage falls within that if you have a way of actually tracking it. Now, I would also contend that unless if you're using an API gateway or something like that, it can be very difficult for people to track. So you got to make sure that you have your login stack right. APIs are also victims to web application attacks. APIs aren't immune to normal OSWAP top 10 style attacks like SQL injection. This is actually a really interesting topic. Since I am making that HTMX video that I have to record for the 4th time, this is actually part of HTMX, which is I think is pretty cool. The body of API requests can also find its way to database inputs, just like a web page form input or URL argument. It's important to ensure that you have a web application firewall. Yep. In fact, when we looked at Cloudflare's WAF's management rules, injection attacks were the second most common threat vector. Cloudflare saw carried out on APIs. The most common threat was HTTP anomaly. That's interesting. I wouldn't have guessed that the most common threat being HTTP anomaly. That's when you like try to put weird data in your HTTP requests. I'm not an expert on this, but like I think they shove like return characters, line breaks, and things like that. Example, never mind, right here. Include malformed method names, a null byte character in headers, non-standard ports, or content length of 0 with a post request. There you go. They're better at it. Here are the stats of other top threats we saw. Okay, so this is really cool. I love the stats that they're putting along with this, like that they actually collected all of these. Directory traversal. what's common attack? What's common? Okay, don't put common attack on there. That's dumb. Software specific. So this is attacking your specific. This is actually really cool. Most of these aren't attacking your specific. They're not, you know, we're looking at what, 5% of all attacks are attacking your software specifically. I guess SQL injection is attacking yours as well. This is software specific too, because it's not you not sanitizing your inputs. But okay, that makes more sense. So now we're even up to 30%. Okay. But the majority are HTTP. I did not realize that. The root cause, okay, let's see. Broken authentication and authorization occur when an API fails to check whether the entity sending requests for information to the API actually has the permissions to request that data or not. Can also happen when attacks try to forge credentials and insert less restricted permissions into existing valid credentials that have more restricted permissions. OWASP categorizes these attacks in a few different ways, but the main category are broken object level authorization and broken function level authorization attacks. The root cause of a successful BOLA, or we'll just go with BOLA, attack lies in the origin API not checking proper ownership of database records against the identity requesting those records. So basically they're saying authorization, not authentication, is the problem here. This is actually what has a problem with GraphQL, anything that. This is the biggest attack against GraphQL databases or GraphQL API endpoints. A lot of the time you don't see people doing field level authorization and protecting it, which means you can build a query to get data that you shouldn't get. Here are 4 ways to plug authentication loopholes that may exist in your APIs, even if you don't have fine-grained authorization policy. This is what you need if you want to use Graph. First, enforce authentication on each publicly accessible API unless there's a business-approved exception. Look for technologies like MTLS, JSON Web Tokens, JWTs is what that's short for. Limit the speed of API requests to your servers to slow down potential attackers. Block abnormal volumes of sensitive data outflow. This is hard. This is hard, right? If somebody is passing authorization this is limiting the data egress. I've never done this. I have to think on this one. Block attackers from skipping legitimate sequences of API requests. APIs are surprisingly human-driven, not machine-driven anymore. If you've been around technology since the pre-smartphone days when fewer people were habitually online, it can be tempting to think of APIs as only used for machine-to-machine communication in something like an overnight batch job process. However, the truth couldn't be more different. As we've discussed, many web and mobile applications are powered by APIs, which facilitate everything from authentication to the transactions to serving media files. We can illustrate this by looking at the API traffic patterns observed during the holidays when people gather around friends and family and spend more time socializing in person and less time online. We've annotated the following worldwide API traffic graph with common holidays and promotions. Notice how traffic peaks around Black Friday and Cyber Monday, around the 10% level when people shop online, but then traffic drops off for the festives of Christmas and New Year's Day. Wow. It looks pretty cyclic. Like, it does look pretty like, are these the weekends? Like, I guess, I'm going to guess these are the weekends and this is the weekday. Easter. Don't know what this is. This pattern closely resembles what we observe in regular HTTP traffic. It's clear that APIs are no longer just the realm of automated processes. Well, cool. Cool. I will leave this for you all if you want to read it yourselves. There is the full there's the full report. We just read the short one, but that's cool. All right, let's jump into what happened. What happened at Resend? So Resend is a supplier of emails. They do email. They're like, I haven't ever used Resend, but they're like Mailgun and those types. They do email marketing campaigns and stuff. I wanted to go over this with you guys because I actually thought that this was a really good example of how to handle an incident report. I also want to talk about what went wrong and maybe some of the lessons learned that they're going to take away from this. Because there's a few places where there was actually some there were some things that went wrong for longer than they should have. We'll put it that way. All right, so one thing to know is they have completely rotated all the secrets. I want to be clear that this seems to be taken care of. The vulnerability was patched. They have also consulted with a third-party firm to make sure that what happened can't happen again. But what happened to them is actually really easy to happen to other people. What happened to them was a really, really dumb mistake. Really dumb. They had an API key that found it into an environment variable in one of their front ends. That's the dumb mistake. It happened. That's what needs to be focused on, making sure that there's things in place that doesn't happen, because that will get you every single time. But we're going to cover their incident report. I did think that they did a very good job with their incident report. Maybe not their incident management, but their report was good. Okay, but it is all taken care of at this time. They've filed all the reports with San Francisco Department, California Federal Bureau, GDPR, and everything, which is good. They're filing the places where they need to be. On January 7th, attackers used a leaked environment variable of the Resend database API to access customer data, including email sent, domains, API keys, logs, contracts, and this was affecting all user. The actual content of emails was not accessed, nor were any, so I'm assuming this was in a different database somewhere else, nor were any unencrypted private keys for the Resend API or DKIM. No user action is required to continue safely sending using Resend. We have since closed the access and rotated all database keys. Additionally, we are participating with a third-party cybersecurity company, OneLeap, to conduct an exhaustive investigation and help ensure the attack never occurs again. So one thing that I'd love to see them come out from this, and I think it's really good to follow up on these, is in a month, detail out what you've done to ensure that an API key doesn't get leaked in an environment variable again. What processes you put in place, what automation you put in place, go and make, that's what I would like to see. I always like it when that happens. I think Cloudflare, when they had their security cameras hacked, did a really good job with that. That would be like a pretty good example of what you've done, and that just instills confidence in me as a user. I'm not a user, but if I was, that you're taking it seriously. It happens. We get hacked. This is another key thing that I want to give them kudos for. We are deeply sorry for the impact this had on users. Just go out and say sorry. That's a good. It's. I don't know how many people don't do this, but just say sorry. We remain committed to transparency and prevention, and the following is a summary of what went wrong and how the incident was resolved, and the work we're doing to ensure it does not happen again. The incident timeline. Now, unlike Cloudflare's, there are gaps in here that shouldn't have happened. All timestamps referenced are in CUT. On December 30th at 11:20 p.m., the attackers first gained access to our system by discovering an exposed database API key as an environment variable on the client side of the RaceN dashboard. Now, one thing that shocks me here is this says database API key. I hope that the database isn't exposed to the public. This is a foot gun every single time that I see people. Don't expose your database to the public. Put it behind an API that has authentication and authorization. Databases generally aren't designed this way. You can get away with it sometimes, but it can be rough. And your front end should never be accessing a database. Like, that just shouldn't be happening. Your front end shouldn't access it. It should ask an API for stuff. On December 31st, so the next day at 12 p.m., a RaceN team member discovered that multiple users were sharing the same billing information. This is the big problem. This should have sent a red flag. This appeared to be a strange bug and did not raise enough of a red flag during the holiday weekend for further investigation. An alarm was put in place to make sure this didn't happen to other users. This is hard. I'm not going to call out the engineer that did this. They noticed something weird, but they thought it was a bug. When you see weird stuff with your data, and since you have customer data, the thing is, my one takeaway from this is if you see weird stuff that shouldn't be possible, you should raise a big red flag right then. You should assume the worst. If data is weird and in a state you don't think is possible to get in, that's weird. Now, maybe he thought that there was a legitimate way for that data to get in that state. And if that's the case, then maybe there's nothing more. But in general, when you're dealing with your customers' data, if you see data in a state you think should be impossible, it's better to sound the alarm and be proven wrong than for 7 days to go by. If they had sounded the alarm here, none of the data would have been accessed. So 7 days go by. January 9th, 2 days later, a user was discovered to have unblocked email sending on their account. During normal operations, senders are blocked for not complying with our accepted use policy. One of these users was able to update fields normally not accessible to users. This was the big red flag that happened. So basically, there was a setting that wasn't reachable by normal users that was getting set on the database. This is a legitimately easy way to detect. Again, I don't know if maybe the person that saw this, if they thought that there was a actual legitimate way for this, but this is another example of unnormal data. You see a configuration that shouldn't be possible. These things should raise really large flags. If you say this isn't exposed anywhere in any API externally for people to hit, big red flag, big red flag. So at this point, RaceN kicked it into gear. If you notice at this point on, it is all hands on deck. This is at 5 a.m. UTC. So just a few minutes later, this incident is promoted to an SEV 0 internally. I don't know what this means internally to them. I'm assuming this is DEFCON 5 trying to get stuff done. We understood this is an attack to be a form of hijacking of an existing API request, not accessing the database. Logs were discovered showing get, patch, and delete requests to the database, making it clear that the database API layer had been accessed, but not clear the full exposure. We're talking another, man, these people have been working long hours. I actually feel bad for these people. So almost at midnight on the 9th, logs were discovered showing programmatic access of the database tables, which allow us to establish the method, extent, and severity of the access. Our audit of the entire database led us to be confident that we know the impact of the incident and have comprehensive knowledge of what happened and what steps we need to take to remediate this. On January 10th, so this is, it's January 10th, but it's actually only 3.5 hours later, the remediation was deployed. So once they finally knew, they had fixed it within 24 hours. It was actually 20 hours. From the initial actual raising of the alarm to finding it, to understanding the full extent, to remediation. So they then rotated all the credentials. So once they realized what had happened, they had a very good incident. What the one takeaway that I would take from this, that I see, is making sure people understand that things that look funky with the data should be raised immediately, even if it's a holiday weekend. That was probably their biggest mistake, not seeing that. And it can be hard. It can be hard because there's also bugs that cause weird stuff as well. So I get it. All right. So that was the big deal here. They have sent out everything. I guess, thankfully, the emails actually weren't stored in this, so nobody actually knows the emails. And I think that they've taken a really good approach to saying, hey, look, we're paying an outside firm to make sure that this doesn't happen again. What could go better next time? I think hopefully this. I hope for them that they find some way to detect this. Now, I know that there's actually some stuff that you can run to look for. I'm trying to think of it. And this is a Kubernetes specific one. Sysdig make it, Project Falco, that looks for odd behavior in the network. You know, something that isn't the standard network traffic. You could look at some solution like that says, hey, this is odd network traffic. There's things that watch your network traffic that can raise that up. So that might have been something that helped with this. I don't know. Other than that, it's a good response. They did a fairly good job of listing down all the important time spans here. I think that they did a great job of actually responding to it, rotating credentials, and letting everybody know they how this affects you. They go through every single thing, which was accessed or not accessed, and whether it was encrypted or not encrypted. So there was some things that were accessed that were encrypted. So, you have some time before they decrypt it, if they take the time to, if it's valuable enough to. And yeah, so, and then a very important part to me is they apologized at the beginning and they sincerely apologize again at the end. Nice job. Nice job, Resend. I'm sorry it happened to you. It sucks. It sucks to be the brunt of January's system. And that was it for security. Did you guys see anything in security? Anything at all? All right. Well, Dezo, that would be awesome if you brought something. I encourage everybody to bring something if they found it interesting, that's share worthy. Go ahead and share it. I miss stuff. I don't get to see the whole internet. It's a big place. It's a big place. So we had a major layoff announcement. So Wayfair lays off over 1,000 employees weeks after CEO told company to work longer hours. This is terrible. This is terrible. When this is not a good look for Wayfair, and I'll tell you why. When you're demanding people to work longer hours and laying them off, it's hard. It's hard. So this is a big portion. Now, I don't know how many people of those were engineers. So I don't know how many it was in the software. I know that there are some software engineers that were laid off from this. I don't know, because they have sales and stuff. Because a lot of people were talking about Google laying off again. But if you look at the Google layoffs, the most of these were in the sales teams. So most of the layoffs in 2024 from Google were sales because they laid off specific teams. A lot of companies don't actually report this. So I don't know, out of the 1650 employees, how many were in the software engineering. I'm not sure. Other than that, I haven't seen too many other groups laying off. Again, other than like Google as well as Amazon, a lot of those were actually in sales positions. So again, not quite the same. Did anybody else see anybody else laying off? That's all I saw so far. All right. Well, we're gonna jump into cloud news, and then I have we have a paper I just wanted to talk about. I read about it. It's about sleeper agents in LLMs, which I thought was interesting. I'm not going to read the whole paper with you guys because the paper was long and I wasted too much time on it when I was reading it. But we're going to talk about that. And then we're going to talk about the most exciting thing to come to JavaScript 2024. I actually saw this on somebody else's stream as they were covering it. They probably did a better job covering it. But as I do the news, and we're software engineers, I thought I would cover it. All right. So let's talk about cloud news. IBM buys Advanced Mainframes Modernization Unit to deepen consulting bench. So it looks like IBM is digging deeper into they're like trying to be the next McKinsey, but in like the tech software area. That's what it feels like. So Advanced Mainframes Modernization Unit was basically a team of consultants that helped banks get off mainframes. That's my understanding of it. I don't know this that well, but that's my understanding of it. So it looks like IBM is trying to double down on that. Now, maybe they're going to try to use this to sell their own cloud offering. I don't know. But that would be like maybe an interesting play. It's not they're pushing to be a consulting firm. They're kind of wanting to get the consultants that understand these mainframes and see if they can't, cater their cloud to that. We'll see what comes from it. Oracle embarks on data center buying spree. So, I mean, this is the Oracle Cloud. I refuse to call it the OCI. The Oracle Cloud, it looks like they're working to expand it. So it's also like quite a bit. Like they're super expanding. So yeah, Oracle promised massive cloud data center build-outs to accommodate enterprise migrations, AI workloads, and sovereign solutions Monday during their earning call. The company expands to expand capacity at 66 existing data centers and build 100 more data centers. 100 more data centers. This I actually found very interesting. Oracle seems to be trying to get in bed with Microsoft. It's weird. Microsoft seems like the cloud that everyone decides that they want to play with. Because if you look at it, OpenAI is exclusively through Microsoft. Llama, you're talking about Oracle database is through Azure. It's like wanting to be the enterprise melding pot. It seems. So yeah, you can get Oracle Cloud now on Azure with a click of the button. convenient if you actually wanted it. So they're saying that they're actually going to build 20 of these 100 new data centers are going to be connected to Azure infrastructure. Now, I'm guessing that this has something to do with providing Oracle databases in Azure, but again, I'm just guessing. The last time Ellison never responded to anything I sent him. So I have no insight. I have no insight in that for you all at all. But yeah, so it seems like they're doing a massive expansion. So maybe we'll have to start covering stuff that happens in Oracle Cloud. I don't know. They're growing. They're growing. Let's talk AWS. AWS has some new stuff. You can stream data into Snowflake using Kinesis Data Firehose and Snowflake Snowpipe. I love Snowpipe as a name. I love Snowflake Snowpipe. Like, they couldn't go with like, snowblower or some word that actually is a real thing. Like, you don't build snow pipes. They went with Snowpipe. I absolutely love it. I absolutely love it. Okay, so anyways, I'm sorry I got sidetracked on that. Look, if you're on AWS and you're using Kinesis, I think that this is fantastic because this lets you have your analytic backend getting pumped into by Snowflake. Like, that seems pretty powerful if you're already leveraging these two things. Being able to hook these two things up seems simple and easy. Now, I haven't leveraged it, but I do like this because a lot of the times your BI backend has this extract and load step, and this could help alleviate some of that. So I'm excited. I think this is a cool thing. And if you need to use it, great. Their network load balancers now support the 3072-bit encoding of the RSA, as well as the ECDSA 256, 384, and 521-bit certificates via AWS Certificate Manager. You will have to do this through AWS Certificate Manager, but this is really good. They have updated. I would have liked to see the 4094, 4091, the RSA 4090, 1 second, let me look that up. What is the stupid number? I want to say it's a 4094, but it should be 4090. Yeah, 4092. I think it's 4092. It's 4096. It's 4096. It's 4096. All right. I should know this. It's 4096. My bad. Anyways, you misled me, Dezo. Anyways, it's good to see. I would have liked to see the 4096. It's becoming more and more common. But the 3072 is good. As well as the ECDSA 521 is also really, really nice. So if you're having more sensitive workloads, you need a higher encryption. Now works. RDS for DB2 now supports cross-region automated backups. So before this, the automated backups only worked in a single region, which it has limited use, to be honest. If you want a backup, you kind of want it to be in a separate region. That's kind of what a backup is for. It still was useful, but this makes it much more useful. So if you're leveraging automated backups, this is a pretty good thing. So go use it. Be free. Backup. All right, announcing workflow execution steps. This is now moving on to Google Cloud. They announced their workflow execution steps history. So if you've been, I just got a splinter somehow. I don't know how. All right. So if you have been working with their workflows and their workflows have these execution steps, they now have a history, which seems like they should have before now, but they do now. The new execution step history solves this problem. You can now view steps level debugging information for each execution from the Google Cloud Console or the REST API. This is amazing. One thing I have to say about Google is that a lot of the times it's just supported in their API and you have to use the G Cloud, which annoys me. It's not in their console, like their cloud console. So I'm glad that it came to the console because it's just nice for somebody that doesn't use their API in a day-to-day. Sometimes it's easier to find in the console. So I think that was pretty interesting. Now they're running BigQuery jobs in parallel. Oh, this is just showing how the execution steps can be leveraged in that. So, okay, cool. So I think that's a pretty cool thing that they've come up with. So if you use it, go check them out. It's going to make debugging them just way easier, to be honest. All right. I think this is a French word, so I think it's do AI. Not sure how to pronounce it, but figuring out microservices running on your GKE cluster with help from Duo AI. Now, if I know anything about AIs, the fact is they love to lie to you convincingly. And so that's where I want you to be careful with this. I have used a lot of them, and I have been lied to by a lot of them. I might have trust issues now. I didn't have trust issues before I started using AIs. I definitely have trust issues now. Now, this seems really nice because microservices are a really difficult things for a lot of people. And I think that using a really nice adaptive statistical analysis model to actually understand your APIs and your microservices, like we were talking with Cloudflare, a little bit better sounds really nice. But I do worry about their propensity to lie. So anyways, I think it's something that might help you, though, if you take it with that grain of salt that it could be lying to you, where you use it to find places to investigate. You use it to find statistical anomalies, and then use that to investigate and understand better. So anyways, I think it's pretty interesting. If you're on Kubernetes, on GCP, I think it's worth giving it a check. Absolutely. All right. Google Cloud. That was it for Google Cloud. I don't know why I had this. Was just me looking for stuff. This is just me trying to find out if I had missed anything. Let's look at Azure. Private preview. I hate private previews because they never give me, as a member of the press, the ability to access it. Upgrade existing Azure Gen 1 VMs to Gen 2 trusted launch. So you're going to get to, basically, if you get on this, you can upgrade. We're excited to announce preview to support enabled trusted launch on Azure Gen 1 VMs by upgrading the Gen 1s to Gen 2 trusted launch, which gives you the whole Gen 2 trusted platform. And so they're working on a way to actually upgrade from Gen 1 to Gen 2. This is actually huge, and this is the things based with the VTRM. Anyways, this basically protects you from rootkits on the machines. And so it actually provides a lot of security, a lot of, you might say, a secure boot for the VMs. It's actually a really good, I believe this is also backed by some stuff that is happening on some of the CPU processes. Anyways, it's a more secure boot chain for your VM. It's good. Now, unfortunately, it's not out yet, and it's in private preview, but I'm really excited for it getting rolled out to everyone so that everyone can go from the Gen 1 to the Gen 2 trusted launch machines. So I'm excited for that. I'm very excited for this. More security is more better, as my grandmother always told me. Public preview. Partition merge now supported shared throughput databases. Maybe not huge, but for the people that actually are leveraging this, if you didn't know, it's now in public preview. If you guys have something that would actually be helpful for this, then definitely give it a look. All right, and then the last thing from Azure was create tests by adding HTTP requests in Azure load testing. This is awesome. To be able to test your API, there's K6, and then there's JMeter, and there's a few things like that, but it can be difficult to do. And Azure Load Testing has introduced a new feature that simplifies the process of creating load tests. Load tests can be difficult to do. You can now directly input your HTTP request in the Azure portal without the need for a JMeter script. That's pretty awesome. You don't have to script it out. Being able to test it better is more better. More better. There you guys go. There you guys go. Now we have two more articles to go over. One's on machine learning, and the other is how to record a video without turning my lights on. I know I promised you guys an HTMX video last week, and the fact is that I have recorded it now multiple times, and I've screwed something up multiple times, literally multiple times. From no audio one time, literally no audio, not bad audio that I worked to clean up, no audio, to I forgot to turn my lights on, so like I was sitting in the dark. It just went from bad to worse. So I'm going to re-record that. I have most of the animations done. They're not complicated animations, so I have a lot of that done that'll have to be tweaked for the new recording. But you know what? Hopefully this week. All right, let's talk about sleeper agents. I know. I grew up just after the Cold War. We always know about the sleeper agents, and there's a new type of sleeper agent out there. I actually found this really fascinating. I'm gonna post this in chat. This is probably why I didn't have as much stuff prepared for you all, because I spent too much time reading this. But I did find it actually to be quite fantastic. So, sleeper agents training deceptive LLMs that persist through safety training. Now, if you guys don't know what safety training is, one second, this is a little off. Boom. That's so much better. All right. All right. So, what safety training is? Mostly safety training gets in my way because that's like Q telling me that it's against its terms of service. It's safeguards put in to try to protect your model from doing something you don't want it to do. So if you want to make a model and you want to make it so that it doesn't let you repair your broken iPhone, let's say that's something that you think your users would get hurt trying to repair your broken iPhone. I don't have an iPhone, by the way. You would do safety training that basically it's just reinforcement training. You just train it on, when I ask about a broken iPhone, the normal human response is, I don't know what an iPhone is. So it's basically just lying to your LLM to try to get it to not. It's a little bit more complicated than that. I'm oversimplifying it, I know, but that's what it basically is. So sleeper agent training deceptive LLMs that persist through safety training. So basically what these researchers did was they very specifically poisoned an LLM's training to persist through safety training. And usually when you do safety training, you also have some sort of thing where you test that it won't let you ask about fixing an iPhone. And if it and they actually get it to pass that and only activate when it's had like a special combination of things asked it. So I found this very fascinating because basically like, I forget one of their examples. One of their examples was like asking it the weather, and then you could ask it the things that were against its terms of service. It was a fascinating article. I absolutely loved it. I think you should go give it a read. I read the PDF version. I think this is wrong, but this is like their new experimental HTML. Just get the PDF. Do yourself a favor. Get the PDF. Anyways, absolutely fantastic. Yeah, it doesn't have rendering problems. It said experimental. It was truly experimental. It was fun. It was fun. I enjoyed it. So if you enjoy learning about AI models, give this a check. Now, the last thing we have on the docket, the last thing to bless your JavaScript. If you thought JavaScript was too easy and you just needed to up your skill, and that's you, there's the all new bun out. Now, we all thought bun was, one thing, and then bun becomes another thing entirely. The bun shell. The bun shell is out. Now, I will give you my personal opinion on this, and that's that I don't really have an opinion on this. I don't write enough JavaScript to really care. Now, why are they saying they made this? Well, it's because they wanted a cross-platform shell experience in JavaScript. Now, my initial question is, why do you want a cross-platform shell in JavaScript? To me, that sounds terrifying. But maybe there is some real use, and if that's the case, maybe this works really well. But you have to have bun installed for it to work. I don't know. Again, maybe it's really awesome. What are your guys' thoughts on this? Have you guys run a lot of shell scripts from JavaScript? Is that something that you commonly do? If it is, maybe this is really awesome. The other thing that it really necessitates having as a requirement, that you want that same shell script to run on Windows and Linux and work, because you can run shell scripts in JavaScript as it is. It's just not cross-platform. So the real niche that this solves is running cross-platform bash scripts. Yeah. Is that a thing? I honestly don't know. I don't know. I don't have the answers for you. That's what it is. I didn't know this was a niche that needed filled. But maybe it does. Does it? Have you guys found yourselves in this niche? Is this what you guys needed? Let me know. I sure don't know. I mean, it looks fine. It looks like PHP. I'm not gonna lie. You start throwing these dollar signs in there all over the place. I think PHP almost instantly. It's not PHP. Do you guys run JavaScript or not JavaScript, but Bash or shell scripts in your JavaScript a lot? I literally never have, but all right. There are examples where like this, it's a cross-platform API, the JavaScript implementation of RF, as like, you don't need this anymore because you can just run a shell. PHP and Perl. Okay, Consumed King, you're right. PHP and Perl. But I also agree with Russell. That is a fantastic bun. That's a fantastic bun. I will take that bun too. Is that English food? Okay, you know what, Russell? I will one up you with that. Put a fried egg in there in the BLT. That's how I like it. That's how I like it. Put the little American spin on the classic. Fried egg with lettuce. Yeah, it's actually really good. You don't fry it too much with just, you want the yolk to, I don't know what that's called. There's a word for it. I was going to say over easy. I don't know that that's the right word for it, but there is a word for it. And it's like that, where the yolk isn't cooked through. And that's kind of like the sauce for the sandwich. You just lightly butter it. We'll cooking stream one of these times. I've got to help. I have got to help you guys with your cooking. It seems like. All right, let's go ahead and let's see. Do we have a person? So sunny side up is a little different because sunny side up, you don't cook the top. Like you put it in the pan and you don't cook the top. That's not what I was talking about. You cook both sides. You just don't cook the yolk. Which I know now that I've said this out loud, like I'm really nitpicking. But it is different. It is different. I promise you it's different. Sunny side up is not quite the same thing. Okay, now I gotta look it up. I was looking up for people to raid, and now I have to look up. It is called over easy. It's over easy. I nailed it. Not sunny side up. Now we can go back to finding a person to raid. I do want to thank you all for coming to the news, talking about our favorite way of leveraging buns. The stream has now become cloudy with the side of meatballs. Dang it. Not wrong. Not wrong. I thank you guys for joining, watching the news, participating. I appreciate it. Let's go ahead and give Anthony writes code. He's doing some open source Python. Not my favorite, but I didn't find any. I mean, the Python. Anthony writes code is fantastic. Python. I was talking about the Python. I do need to get going because I got to re-record my HTMX video yet again. So we're going to go ahead and raid Anthony writes code. And hopefully you all had a great weekend. Hopefully you guys have a great week in the future. This next week. See you guys next week. Join the raid. Tell Anthony I said hello.